Hello and salam, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation on mindful leadership, which I call Leading with Heart, the power of mindful leadership. My name is Farah Khan, an executive in the healthcare RCMS space, and I will be moderating today's session. We are living in a time where leadership looks very different today than it did a few years ago. The workplace is fast paced, emotionally demanding, and constantly evolving. Because of that, leadership today is no longer just about titles, authorities, productivity, or technical expertise. It's also about emotional intelligence, empathy, self awareness, communication, and the ability to lead people with intention and humanity. Today's section is centered around how do we stay grounded while making difficult decisions? How do we create environments while people feel heard, valued, and supported? And how can we be mindfulness help us become not only better professional, but better leaders and human beings. Mindful leadership is not about perfection. It's about awareness, learning how to pause, reflect, listen actively, regulate emotions, and lead with authenticity. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Sabine Ali. With more than a decade of experience in leadership coaching alongside an accomplished career in cybersecurity and healthcare leadership, she brings a thoughtful and grounded perspective on emotional intelligence, leadership development, mindfulness, and building healthier workplace culture. Her work focuses on helping leaders lead with greater self awareness, resilience, and connection, especially in fast paced, high pressure environment. We are excited to hear her insights and practical approaches on how mindfulness can transform the way we lead, communicate, and support those around us. And what does it actually mean to lead mindfully? At this moment, I will turn it over to you, Sabine. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for that very warm introduction. I want to thank you all for being here for this very important conversation. And it is a conversation. So I'm going to invite all of you to participate in some ways. But also good morning and good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are. I want to start with anchoring us around a quote. So that I would like for you guys to just kind of keep in the background. So the quote is, great leaders are not defined by how quickly they react, but by how deeply they are aware. So keep that in the background as we continue with this conversation. And today, it's really about the human element of leadership and how mindfulness enhances our ability to connect, to collaborate, and lead other human beings. So let me ask you a question. What are some traits that come to mind when you think of a great leader? Feel free to share it in the chat. Um, what are your thoughts? Like what makes a leader a great leader? This is interactive, so feel free to share your thoughts.
I would say kindness, empathy, integrity, creating a vision. Those are all like I would consider it a great trait of a mindful leader, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, those are some really great traits.
One thing that has stood out to me while preparing for this session is that the idea that emotional intelligence is not just a soft skill, but a critical leadership skill. Can you talk about why it matters so much today?
Yeah, that's actually a very important question, Farah. And honestly, it's something that I've been asking people for many years, both as an executive coach and a cybersecurity leader. So years ago, strong leadership was described, I would say this is like maybe over a decade ago, as charisma, ambition, um, authority, vision, someone who had that presence, right? And while those attributes are they still matter, leadership is evolving because the environment that we operate in has changed. So as we're navigating this new environment, fast paced, social media, people are working from home. There's not as much engagement as there used to be. Of course, AI transforming the world. All this uncertainty leads to increased emotional pressure. So when I ask the same question today, people describe leadership very differently. It's more around people-centered awareness, right? Because we're not seeing people face to face like that anymore. Collaboration, compassion, empathy, and all of those are deeply connected to emotional intelligence. So that's what led me to explore mindfulness more deeply, not just for executives, but for anyone with influence at work, at home, in their communities. So mindfulness is I'm going to read the dictionary definition of mindfulness. So mindfulness is the awareness that comes from paying attention intentionally in the present moment with curiosity and compassion. And I'm going to say that again. Mindfulness is the awareness that comes from paying attention intentionally in the present moment with curiosity and compassion. And that awareness matters because when we recognize that we're doing what we're doing while we're doing it, our emotions, reactions, triggers, and patterns that we've developed over time, we gain the ability to choose our response instead of reacting automatically. And in complex environments, leadership environments, um, it's no longer defined only by your leadership style, right? Or your technical expertise, or your ability to solve problems. It's defined by your ability to pause, stay present, and respond with intention, especially when the pressure is very, very high. So that's what emotional intelligence in leadership kind of looks like. It's not a soft skill. It's a critical leadership skill, and it helps leaders regulate emotions under pressure, communicate better. There's an ability to build trust, create environments where people feel seen and supported. So let me give you a real life example. Okay, think of a hospital emergency room. It's loud, it's fast paced, chaotic. You've got someone who just came in, maybe they had a bad accident, or a patient struggling to breathe. We don't know if they're going to be alive. Someone else is getting worse by the minute, and families are anxious. Nurses are trying to move quickly and accommodate all the different scenarios that are taking place. And the doctors are making a decision on the spot. Now, there's no time to go regulate yourself, right? And come back. It really is a practice. So the question is, how do people stay steady in that kind of environment? And the truth is, they don't do it by being, emotionless or robotic. They do it by learning how to stay present while everything is happening. So I don't know, it may look like a nurse taking a deep breath, or, a doctor slowing their tone because it's, even though it's urgent, but it's like the information needs to get across. And, that's kind of what leadership looks like in today's world. I mean, it could look like in today's world if we have that awareness. So I think that emotional regulation piece is incredibly powerful because leadership is often tested mostly during the difficult conversations. You guys know, stressful moments, disagreements, and so on and so forth.
Agree. Like, if we really take a real world example of mindful leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic, was how many nurse leaders and hospital managers intentionally prioritize both patient care and emotional well-being of their healthcare teams, even under extreme pressure.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. And, I actually want to share a small, small story with you. So for much of my life, my father struggled with serious mental health challenges. So in my late 20s, I became his legal guardian, and my life was very much centered around, managing, solving, preparing for all the different aspects of his care, and always anticipating the next decision or crisis that would come up. So I thought, for me at that time, being a young adult, that leadership in that moment meant, responsibility, control, making sure everything is done on time, accurately, as designed, and getting everything right. But over time, I realized something very important, and in being so focused and fixing everything, all the crises that would come up, I stopped being fully present with my father actually. And the shift happened when I understood that his time is limited, and underneath all the urgency, there was something simpler and more human, which was my love for my father. And I realized, what mattered most was not solving every problem perfectly, but making sure that he felt my presence. So I started to spend more time with him. And then there are some things that I would just kind of like put aside because so that I could be present with him in that moment.
Thank you, Sabine, for sharing such a moment of your life. I think that's such an important point because to humanize leadership means creating a space for people to feel seen, heard, and supported, and not just managed. Many workplaces have historically focused heavily on performance, productivity, and result. But people don't just remember what was achieved, they remember how their leaders made them feel. And mindful leadership really recognizes that deeper human side of leadership. Presence is as just as powerful as performance, and connection is as just important as execution.
Yes, agreed, agreed. And actually, when you talk about execution, I use this simple framework in my coaching practices, and it's called AIM. It's the AIM framework. So the A in AIM stands for allowance, and the I in AIM stands for inquiry, and M stands for mindsets. And it's, when I bring this into practice, it's like these kinds of practices that have reshaped how I understand leadership. And it's taught me that leadership isn't really just about the outcomes or decisions, it's about presence, awareness, and how we show up in those human moments. So I'm going to give you an example of, let's just say how to apply this in real life, right? So when I was a director of governance, risk compliance, privacy, customer relationship management for a healthcare technology company, serving organizations, large organizations like Pfizer and major health insurers. I was essentially doing the work of several executives rolled into one, right? And the pressure from senior leadership was always on. So every day there was competing priorities, tight deadlines, audits, customer demands, constant change. And it would have been easy to let that pressure spill over onto my team. But this is where allowance mattered, right? It's like before team meetings and as I was building the team, I learned to notice what I was carrying in that moment. Like, was I anxious? Am I frustrated? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Because if I wasn't aware of my own state, I would unknowingly transfer it to everyone around me, right? So yeah, so asking questions like, how are you showing up right now? What am I feeling? What patterns or triggers are influencing my reactions? And when we go to the inquiry part of an inquiry, you want to get very curious, right? This is like the pause, the moment we choose, our response instead of reacting automatically. Being curious in the inquiry of a situation moment, asking like, questions like, okay, well, what obstacles are, these people facing? What support do they need from me? How can I remove barriers, instead of becoming the barrier? So, those are just some questions. Of course, you can, be curious and have your own set of questions. And, by applying the allowance and inquiry, um, you're able to create clarity where there's confusion and build safety. So the team could, do their best. And so we weren't just, checking like boxes or building, we're building something together, right? At that point. So when I eventually left the organization, every member of that team chose to either they chose to leave or they're calling me all the time, like, why did you leave? I hope you come back. Not because the work disappeared, but because the environment changed. And so it reminded me that people, often don't just like leave their jobs. It's, if you're developing a growth-oriented, resilient, and, purposeful perspective. And this is kind of mindful leadership in a nutshell. Normally, this course would be, a lot longer, maybe 3 hours, instead of, 40 minutes. But in a nutshell, that's mindful leadership.
Well said, Sabine. I really appreciate how precisely you explained the simple word aim. The way you broke it down made it feel practical and easy to remember. I'm gonna apply this in my leadership roles, or in my life as well. It reminds us that the self-awareness is not just about knowing our emotion, it is also about pausing, checking in with ourselves, and understanding how our response can impact the people around us. Could you help me elaborate more on how can leaders become more self-aware in high pressure environment?
Yes, sure, sure, sure. So in high pressure leadership environments, expertise alone is not going to be enough, right? The leader who creates trust, stability, and those who understand themselves, their own triggers, their own stress responses, and how they show up under pressure. Because, the people that you're leading, they're looking to you to get answers or solve problems, right? But if you yourself cannot lead them and you're, I don't know, let's just say you're upset or you're, triggered by something, how couldn't you lead that team, right? So, um, so it's important to be self-regulated and have the ability to pause, especially in a crisis-driven environment. When people are looking to leadership for the emotional stability, that pause creates space between the reaction and the response. So, just said a different way, it's what's going on right now and the actions you're taking in between all of that. It's basically the pause. It's the choice that you can make in that moment. And that's what allows leaders to stay grounded instead of escalating their stress.
Right. I feel like some leaders may be reacting to situations without taking a moment to pause and reflect. And mindfulness create that space between reaction and response.
Yes, Farah, absolutely right. So purpose and power, right, are not about like simply paying attention or staying focused. Those are those are skills, yes. And but the deeper opportunity here is your ability to choose how we respond, how we reconnect, by asking questions. What impact do I have as a leader in this moment? That question transforms attention into actually meaningful actions.
Yes. And I can definitely see how having a greater purpose connects to power. Thanks, Sabine. There is one area I personally want to emphasize. not just for myself, but also for our audiences to better understand. And that is active listening. I feel active listening is such an important part of mindful leadership. Can you talk a little bit why it matters and how leaders can practice it in real life situations?
Sure, sure. This is actually one of my favorite things to train on. It's a great skill. Just remember, we have one mouth to speak from and we have two ears to listen from. So, more listening is definitely helpful. So this is, it's a great skill, especially in a face-to-face conversation, but really it can be had virtually on the phone as well, right? And many times we listen to respond instead of listening to understand. So here are some tips on how to actually actively listen. You want to give your full attention and maintain eye contact. Show that you're listening to the person. Like if they're talking to you and let's say they're nodding or they're smiling, just look at their verbal cues. And you don't have to, of course, do the exact same thing they're doing, but kind of be in the same ballpark of their verbal cues. So, what we call that mirroring, or you can also repeat back what you just heard, but maybe not in the exact words, right? So it doesn't seem like you're being robotic about it. And then this is one step further that you can take in your active listening, and it's trying to understand the emotion behind the person you're listening to. So I'm going to invite you now, actually, Farah, to do this exercise with me. Can you talk about maybe something that's going on in your life right now, and we can demonstrate for our attendees today emotional intelligent conversation?
Sure. An active listening. Okay, I'm gonna share a piece of my life that's happening right now.
Mm.
Um, as I was preparing for this webinar, I found out that my mother, who is back home in India, had been admitted into the ICU.
Wow.
Hearing that news while trying to stay engaged in so many other responsibility really made me break down emotionally. There
Mm.
were so many thoughts going through my mind at once. My immediate reaction was, this is the woman who raised me, who shaped me, and who made me who I am today. So
So
much.
much.
Sorry, it's just freaking out. Um, I'm so much of who I am is because of her love and her strength and her effort. And now, when she's in that situation, in that condition, I'm so far away from her, and that feeling is really very heavy.
Oh, I thank you. Thank you. First of all, Farah, thank you so much for trusting me with such a sensitive topic from that's going on in your life right now. You must be so worried about your mother, especially for being, she's overseas and you're here in the States. I can really get that you're wanting to be close to her at this moment while she's going through this.
Yes, and for this webinar, I was worried about how I was going to show up and be present as a leader while still being so concerned for my mom. At the same time, because of this unforeseen situation, I'm also traveling very soon. There is a lot going through my mind, like who will watch my kids and how I will take time off, how I will manage everything, and how I can still stay present today.
Wow, thank you so much for being here to make a difference for our attendees today. And I really understand the urgency you have for wanting to go back home to see your mother. And and I would be rushing to go back, and the urgency for all the planning that it takes place in order for you to actually get on the plane and head out. There is a sense of responsibility to be prepared as much as possible, for this webinar. But one thing, Farah, I also hear It's that because you're actually here today, that there's a sense of relief I hear in your voice that despite everything, you made it.
Yeah, like true. But thank you for understanding this, Sabine. I truly feel like, this was a safe space to have this conversation, and I truly feel heard.
Thank you, Farah. Thank you for sharing. And this is for our attendees. Thank you for demonstrating that with me, Farah, today. And this is what active, mindful leadership, active listening really kind of looks like on the court. When people feel genuinely heard, it changes the entire workplace dynamic as well. And you can apply this in your everyday lives. I know people think they're listening, actively listening, but if you ask the other person if you're really listening, a lot of times, you'll understand that you're not. So this is a way that you can actually actively listen, and it improves, the trust with the other person. Communication improves, collaboration becomes easier. So imagine how calming that can be for someone who's going through a hard time, feeling overwhelmed, having a nervous breakdown, feeling doubtful about big decisions that are coming their way. So sometimes we don't need to immediately fix the situation. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do as leaders is really just listen, reflect, and make the other person feel seen and supported. And when we know what truly matters, you can keep it in the forefront of your awareness. It becomes a compass, really, for how we lead and how we show up. So I'm going to now invite you to take a moment to reflect on what really matters to you. Just notice your body, notice any tension, notice any ease. Don't try to change anything. Your thoughts are going to arise and just notice them. Return to what matters and ask yourself, how do I want to show up in the world today? Just take a few deep breaths in and out. And I want to thank you all for being here. I'd encourage everyone who's listening to reflect, how do I show up under pressure? How do I create safety for others? So let's hear from a few of you. And Suhail, I see that you responded earlier. Thank you for participating. But let me just ask a few of you now, like, how do you show up under pressure? You can actually type it into the chat, or you can call it out and unmute your mics.
So, our audience, this is time where we can answer your questions on mindful leadership. If you have anything to ask or say about it, feel free.
Give you a few more seconds. Have a lot of
Yes.
shy people in the room today. Okay, Farah. Okay, great. Sohail, thank you, Sohail. So Sohail is saying it's powerful and empowering for people to be heard. Yes, for sure. For sure. Okay, well,
I'm sorry, Sabine, you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead, Farah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say mindful leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about awareness, empathy, authenticity, and intention. And thank you, Sabine, for sharing such a powerful insight. And thank you, everyone, for being a part of this conversation. And we hope you leave today not just with ideas, but with awareness you can carry into your leadership and your life.
Thank you, Farah, for moderating this event. It's very important conversation, and thank you for your leadership, and for participating kind of on the fly like that. Now we're just going to talk a little bit about, who can join AMP. AMP is American Muslim Health Professionals. So if there's anyone in the health field, you can join our WhatsApp group. You can take a picture of this QR code and feel free to join our group. There's a lot of meaningful discussions that take place there. And so please participate. And also one other announcement, we are hiring having people join our board, and especially specifically in New Orleans and Texas. So if there's anyone interested in that, feel free to reach out to us. And also now I'm going to just open the floor up for any questions or answers for either myself or for Farah.
I don't think so. There are much more our audience have for today. And to this, I would like to do the closing for this webinar, and I hope everyone have a wonderful Sunday. Salam, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.